right towards her, and I just took off like a bullet from a gun. I know it doesn't look it, but I'm very fast. And she got out of her seat and she started going after that ball too. Yeah, this was going to be huge. This was going to be epic. And so I knew, now I'm chasing this ball, and I knew I can't just chase the ball, because what if I come up behind the ball and I kick it or I push out, do it right to her? I knew, because I played basketball in junior high, and our coach taught us how to box out for a rebound, right? And so, yeah, and so I knew I got to box out in position, so I went running past the ball, and I did this, I just boxed out. I just backed it up right there. And the ball came rolling to me, and I picked it up like this, and I held it right here, and she came crashing up behind me, and I went, no, I didn't. I didn't do that. But what I did do was this. I said, oh yeah! I got the ball! And you got nothing. And I turned and looked, and on the Jumbotron, it was me! And I went, yeah! And everybody there had seen what had happened, and they're like, ooh. I'm like, yeah! And I sat down, and everybody's like, everybody else said, didn't she get the ball back to her? No, I didn't give it to her. I kept it for myself. Oh, I know. And I sat down and I held on to that ball. And I took it home after the game. And I put it right by my bed. And even right now in my little house in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, about 20 feet from where I lay my head, in a simulated glass box is that ball. And you can have it from me when you pry it from my cold, dead fingers. See, I have a priority problem. And sometimes I make little things seem really important. And sometimes I make important things seem really, really small. Now look at that baseball now. And I do know right where it is. I look at that baseball now. In fact, I saw it the other day. And when I saw it, I thought, you know, that ball was so important to me that night that I wiped out or chased down the ball and didn't give it to this wonderful lady. But I held on to that thing because it was so important to me, and now it sits in my basement. And that ball is 20 years old, and guess what? It's worthless. If I put it on eBay, it wouldn't get one bid because it's just a foul ball, a meaningless foul ball. How many prayers has that foul ball answered for me? None.
0.
How many sins has that foul ball forgiven of mine? What has that foul ball ever done for me? Nothing. And it's worthless. Yet, I made it such a priority. I made it such a thing. I know it's so important to me for such a short time. I'm telling you guys, these priorities, these distractions that get in our way, that keep us from loving people as Christ has loved us. These things will get us nowhere. And they're worthless. If it can be man-made or purchased here on earth, it will disappear. That phone that you have right now that you think is so awesome, in 2 years will be obsolete. You'll be on to something else. Those video games you play now that you spend so much time getting really good at, in a couple of years you'll be on to something. It will mean nothing. This is why we need to remember what's really, really important. It's always important to remember who we are rooted in. We are rooted in Jesus. And our life ought to be about sharing that with others through the way we live and the way we speak. Amen? That's the only thing that's going to last. Nothing else will stand the test of time. Nothing else is as important as that. And I ask you to take that on as your own mission and share it with other people. I ask you that the importance of you reaching out and loving other people the way Christ has loved you will change this world much more than anything you can buy. It'll change this world much more than any distraction that gets in our way. It's time for us as Christians to reach out. And as we talked about this morning, the ways you can reach out at home, there are tons of ways that you can share the love of Jesus with your friends, at work, at school, wherever it is you go. And here's one. You didn't like my clean the room suggestion this morning. That's all right, it's the truth, we'll deal with it. You're going to like this one even less. Here it is. Sharing Christ in our friendships means this. Finding the kid in your school that doesn't have anybody else as a friend. Maybe Christ is calling you to reach out to that person. To the kid who eats lunch every day by themselves. To the kid who gets bullied around and put down and pushed down. To the kid that gets left out. I ask you to consider that. And to ask God if He's calling you to reach out to that kid. Guys, that's how we change the world. That's how as Christians we change the world. Because we can gather here and dance around and sing about Jesus and all that stuff, but if we don't take it home, it doesn't mean anything. If we don't take it back to the world and love people like Jesus has loved us, what we do here is meaningless. Because it can't be a secret that we keep to ourselves, so we've got to share it. Amen? Amen. When I worked at a camp, I worked at this Bible camp in Iowa for about 12 years. I saw a lot of people come and go. And one summer, during one of our middle school weeks, there was about 200 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at camp. And I met this little guy. There was a guy there, his name was Jake. And I wondered about Jake. He was interesting. And he kind of stood out because he was in 7th grade and he was completely bald. And when you're in 7th grade and you're completely bald, there's something going on. There's a story there. And so I got to know Jake a little bit and spent some time with some people who knew him. And I heard Jake's story. Jake was a 7th grader from Des Moines. And he was up at camp for the week. This was late in the summer, and he was feeling pretty good. Because the Christmas before, Jake had found out that he had cancer. And he had spent his winter and spring going through chemotherapy treatments to get rid of the cancer. One of the side effects, obviously, if any of you know anything about chemotherapy, one of the side effects is that sometimes you lose your hair. And Jake lost his hair during the winter time and was really struggling with chemo. When you take chemotherapy, even though it's medicine, it's really hard on it and it exhausts you and completely wipes you out. And then you slowly get better and better and build up your strength, and then finally it's time for another round of chemotherapy. It's just this roller coaster. Well, all through the winter and spring, Jake had been on this roller coaster and had been up and down with his chemotherapy, and he lost his hair, and life was rough. But even worse than the cancer for Jake was that as spring came, Little League season started, and he was not able to play Little League. And he loved baseball. His coach kept calling the house to check in on him and said to his mom, he said, you know, if Jake ever wants to join us, if he ever feels good enough to come down to the diamond and join us, we'd love to have him. It doesn't matter when, just come on down, we'll have a uniform ready for him, and it'll be great. We'd love to have him. Well, it got to be about the last game of the season. In fact, it was the last home game of the season. When Jake said to his mom, he said, Mom, I feel pretty good. I'd like to join the team. And she's like, yes. She thought that was great. She'd already gotten his uniform from the coach. So he went in, he put it on, and there was a game in a little while, and he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go, Mom. And she's like, this is fantastic. He put his big hat on, they jumped in the car and started driving towards the diamond. They got on their way there. They were, I don't know, about halfway there, she said, when Jake started feeling really, really nervous. And he said, Mom, I don't know about this. And she said, why, Jake, what's wrong? And he started talking about how, well, they've never seen me. These guys haven't seen me all year. They've never seen me as a bald kid. And I don't know if I can handle that, going back and being the bald kid. What are they going to say? They're going to tease me. They're going to make fun of me. And he just didn't think it was something he wanted to do. His mom said he was getting really anxious about it and started wringing his hands. And she said I started driving faster because I didn't want him to change his mind. And then he said, oh, no. She said, what? He goes, what about the other team? They don't even know that I had cancer. They're just going to know that there's a bald kid. And he just could hardly stand it. Well, just as he was talking about that, they drove into the parking lot. His whole team was already there, and the coach saw him coming, so he called everybody into the dugout. They all gathered in the enclosed dugout there, and Jake and his mom pulled up behind, stopped right there, and she said, "Honey, have fun." Because she knew how much he loved baseball, and she knew how much being out there really, really was going to mean to him. And he said, "Okay." And he got out of the car, and he walked towards the dugout, and he just thought, "This is how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to turn the corner, walk in the dugout, just take it. Let them tease me, let them say all their stuff, and laugh, and let's get it over with," he thought, because then we can play baseball, and that's really what I want to do. So he walked up behind the dugout, and he thought it was odd. He didn't hear anybody talking, or no one was saying anything. And when a group of 12-year-olds, when there's 14 12-year-olds in one room, there's usually more noise than that. But there wasn't really that day, and he thought that was a little strange. He walked up behind the dugout, and he turned the corner, and he kind of pulled his hat down, because he didn't want them to see. He knew they knew, but he didn't want them to see. Pulled his hat down and stood on the top step of the dugout where everyone could see him, and not one person made a noise. And he thought, well, this is really weird. And he started to lift his head up, and as he did, he could see all these boys were sitting on the bench, all in a row, all just sitting there like this. And he thought, this is really weird. He lifted his head up a little bit more. And as he could see all these guys sitting on the bench, he noticed one interesting thing about every single one of them. All 14 of them were completely bald. And he thought, that's weird. And he looked over at his coach, and his coach was standing there. Coach took off his hat, bald. And he didn't have a long ways to go, but he finished it off, and that was pretty nice. And Jake walked down, and his teammates jumped up and surrounded him and welcomed him back to the team. And what they said to Jake without saying was, "Jake, you're part of us. Jake, you're on our team. And if the other guys, if the other team wants to tease the bald kid, they can tease us all." Now, I didn't read about that story in the newspaper. I didn't hear it on TV. Wasn't around the world on the internet. It didn't change the world that day. But you know what? It changed Jake's world. And it made a huge difference and a huge impact in his life. Because he knew at that moment what it was like to be accepted, to be loved, just as he was by his friends. And his world was completely different.